Hey guys, thanks a lot for giving this chance to talk at ETHAsia. It's my first time in Hong Kong, and I'm really enjoying the city of Hong Kong. It's a very unique city where only this small strip people are living, and the rest is all nature. So as someone who likes trees, I really like Hong Kong a lot as a city. Um, so I'll give a quick overview of deep funding, but before that, I'll start with a story. I'm a journalist, so I like stories. Um, I started tweeting every day in October 2022, and there was another event where Vitalik was giving a talk in Berlin. So I tweeted about that event, and after that, he followed me and kept engaging with my content. And I wrote a tweet saying that I'm interested in how we can use AI to quantify impact. And then he got in touch saying, I've been thinking about something similar. And we talked over 5 days, and that became deep funding. So the lesson for everyone in this room is tweet about your ideas. Don't just be a developer working heads down, but also write every single day about what you're working on. Um, so how many of you have heard of Protocol Guild? Can you show of hands, Protocol Guild? Okay, so not a lot of people. So Protocol Guild is maybe what we would call a level 1 complexity guild, where someone gives money into Protocol Guild, and that gets distributed to all the people working on Ethereum's core protocol. So they currently have about $70,000 a year given to 190 developers to Ethereum. So it makes the protocol more secure, because when I speak to a lot of developers, they say that they want to keep working on Ethereum because they get Protocol Guild benefits. So it's been very good that way. So that's what's called a level 1 complexity guild, where you have layer 2s giving airdrop to Protocol Guild that distributes to contributors. What we are trying to do with deep funding is a level 2 complexity guild, where people give money into a smart contract, and that goes into different repos of Ethereum. So there are 34 open source repos in Ethereum, which are very core. These are consensus clients, execution clients, and we try to give money to those repos. So Protocol Guild gives to individuals, we give to repos, which allows for recruitment and forward planning. So that's kind of a quick overview, that how do we actually fund the entire universe of open source software that powers Ethereum. So this is kind of one of my favorite slides about like the biggest problem. How many of you have applied for a grant before? Show of hands, that's 1, 2, and okay, so not a lot of 3 people have applied for grants. So all of it suffers from what I call the problem of only crying babies get fed. So if you cry very loudly, then you'll get a grant. And if you are someone who does not like to market or talk about your work, you don't get any money, basically. And this is true for Gitcoin rounds. It's true for all of our, like for grant applications. You have to do networking. You have to market your project. And only then do you actually get money. And like the reason for this is the second problem, which is quantity over quality. All of the judges have to go through many, many projects, and that's not fun for them to do. They have to go through 500 applications. So another very fun story, like Vitalik was told to like stop being a judge in ETH Global, because when he has to go through 30 projects, he could not do a good job of it. So he wants to just focus on 3 or 4 projects and do a very good job with them. So that's kind of the other problem deep funding is trying to solve. How can a judge just give like 5 reviews of a project, or like reviews of 5 projects, and somehow that influences the allocation to all of the projects? So that's kind of how we want to use AI. And the all the projects should be rewarded. So not just those who apply for the round, or they come to know of it, or they know the director of the foundation. Everybody who's contributing should be able to get rewarded for the value that they provide. So this kind of is, in a brief, what deep funding, what we want. The biggest help that I need right now in terms of my work at the EF over the next 2 months is just outreach to machine learning and AI people. Because the challenge that we have open right now is to build an AI model which gives ranking to 15,000 edges in the Ethereum graph. So there are 5,000 open source repos. Some of them are used multiple places. And we need to know how important are each of these 5,000 repos. So we want to reach the AI community to take part in this challenge and build a model which tells us this. What do they have to do? So on one level, you have the level 1, which is 34 core repos. These are consensus, execution, and dev tooling clients. So we have to give a weight such that they add up to 1. A plus B plus C plus D should equal to 1. Then we have to figure out how much stays with the repo versus passed on to dependencies. So if I give an example of Brave browser, how many of you have heard of or used Brave browser? Okay, quite a few people, like 5, 6 people have worked on Brave. So Brave browser is actually not very original. The actual repo is called Chromium. Chromium is the open source repo, and Brave browser is a wrapper which we interact with. So if you're giving money, you want to give more money to Chromium and less money to Brave browser because Chromium has done the bulk of the work. So that's what level 2 is, figuring out how much goes to the repo and how much goes to dependencies. And then the third level is just funding all of the dependencies. So Brave browser has Chromium, and it has many other dependencies. So figuring out which ones are more important. So this kind of is, I'll go into it deeper. So in the next slide, you can see it. This is like my favorite slide. This is the entire graph which makes Ethereum work. All of the different open source repos in Ethereum are represented over here. So there's about 10,000 edges in this graph. And if there's one takeaway that I want all of you to walk away with, it's that this is an unweighted graph. So there's no, all these lines are equal. And what we want AI people to do is tell us how thick these lines are. Like which lines are more important and which lines are less important. That's in a nutshell what deep funding is. It's an AI competition where you have to build a model which gives weights to this graph. This graph is not weighted. So that's kind of the, if there's nothing else you take away from this talk, like that's what I want you to kind of walk away with. We want AI submissions that give this weights. So let's assume that everybody in this room makes a submission in deep funding. So we'll have about maybe like 100 submissions. Everybody has submitted an AI model. So then the question becomes, how do we choose which AI gets selected? Which is the top AI? Which is the second best AI? So that's where we have like a judging mechanism with juries. So, so we have about 80 judges in deep funding who've totally made 600 comparisons. So on the right, you can see Babel versus ESLint. And the judge has said that ESLint is 256 times more important than Babel. So then the question becomes like, which AI model is best fitting the all of these judgments which judges make? So kind of if I have to break it down easily, the judges give very few decisions because they have less time. So they give few decisions. AI model gives ratings on all of the repos, all 15,000 edges. Judges give for 500, AI gives for 15,000. But we use the 500 ratings of the judges to select the winning AI model. So which AI model is best fitting 500 ratings of the judges is kind of what deep funding is. So it's a really fun challenge. It's very meritocratic. If any of you think that you're good at AI, please take part in this challenge. There's $50,000 in prizes from Vitalik. So it's also the glory of kind of receiving money from Vitalik and contributing to Ethereum. So if any of you are into AI, like please submit and take part in this challenge. It's open for the next 2 months. This kind of is a representation of what the end output of deep funding is. This is just based on GitHub stars. So do not take these numbers seriously, but it gives an indication of how it would work. You put money into one public key, and this is actually the prompt which Vitalik gave, that is there a way to just have one public key? I put money in it, and it gets distributed to all of the different open source repos that make Ethereum work. Like he does not want to get into, I'll give this much money to this project, that much to the other. That's not something kind of which is fun to do. So just give money into one public key, and it gets distributed. So in this example, if you put money, if you put $100, $15 goes to Remix project, $13 goes to Go Ethereum, $4 goes to Lodestar. So it's very simple to just put money and get it distributed to all of these different weights. This is a more concrete and a more fun example of what deep funding looks like the end output. So this looks at the ideological basis of Ethereum. This is kind of what Vitalik gave as an example of how deep funding would work. You have Ethereum in the center, and all of the influences of Ethereum. So Bitcoin's monetary policy is 19.5% responsible for Ethereum. Free and open source software is 20.5% responsible. So all of like Bitcoin is also not original. Bitcoin relies on Marx's labor theory of value. Bitcoin depends on Austrian economics. So Bitcoin has its own influences. So the second level is how much is Bitcoin originally responsible and how much are the dependencies responsible. So kind of if I have to show how this graph would work, I put $100 into this graph. $20 goes to Bitcoin's monetary policy, but that is only 1/3 responsible for Ethereum. 2/3 belongs to the dependencies. So only $7 out of $20 would go to Bitcoin's monetary policy. The remaining $13 goes to the dependencies. So labor theory of value or Marx gets 25 cents. Austrian economics is 1/3 responsible. So that gets about $4. So that's the way to interpret this graph. It's a way to fund all of the different kind of repos. And why is this important? I think this is kind of the concluding line I want you all to take away, is that corporates have always defeated open source networks because they integrate their profit centers with their cost centers. So if I take something like Twitter, or like Twitter has a profit center, which is the ad division, and it has a cost center, which is community notes. So the ad division does not get to control how much money goes to community notes. We have a centralized system of CEOs, and the CEOs decide how much money each department gets. But in open source networks, we don't have that. The profit centers get to decide how much money goes to the cost centers, and because of that, we develop inferior products. So kind of what I really hope we can achieve with deep funding being the first example is better integration of the cost center with the profit center in open source networks. So assuming that all of you build an app and your app has 100 dependencies, you obviously want your dependencies to also grow with you. So you can create your own dependency graph, give weights to each dependency, and whatever revenue your app earns also goes to your dependencies to help them grow, and your product becomes better as a result. So if we really want to compete with corporates, we need to better integrate our profit centers and our cost centers. And this is kind of a step in that direction. These are some of the fun challenges. Like my main job at the EF is trying to figure out how we can get AI people interested in crypto and not just crypto people into AI, which is currently what we have. So this is like a really cool challenge that we just closed submissions for, where people have to build an AI model which predicts how much money 800 projects in Gitcoin round will get. So you build a model and it says, this project is going to get $500, this project will get $800. And once the round begins, we stop submissions, and then we see at the end of the round which model best predicted the results of the Gitcoin round. So it's a very fun and meritocratic challenge that you can build your own model, make predictions of which project gets how much money, and at the end we can see which model was actually the best at predicting it. And the cool part of this is, even if a project does not take part in a Gitcoin round, but we want to give them money, we can just see what is the top model, how much does it predict that the project would get if it had taken part. And then we can just give money to the project based on that. So projects don't need to shill, they don't need to market. They can just we can ask the top model, how much will this project get in a QF round? And we get an answer, and we know how much money to give a project. Because in general, humans are good at deciding which projects are good, but they are bad at deciding how much money a project should get. So we do badly in terms of quantity, but we do well in terms of, is this good or bad? So that's kind of one of the problems that deep funding and these challenges solve by telling us how much money should a project get if we know for a fact that we want to fund them. This is a second challenge that we just finished up. We've started making the payouts to the winners, where we had a database of a lot of past funding rounds, and we asked participants to build AI models which predict how much money projects would get in those past funding rounds, which are already over. And they had a write-up, so you can actually go to the link at the bottom, and you can see some of the model submissions that were made. Interestingly, like the winning submission found that number of open issues is a very important indicator of how much funding a project gets. If you have open issues, it means you generally get more money. You can't obviously game this because no one knows which AI model is going to win. And that's kind of the really good part of all of these challenges, that if I am a project and I want to get maximum money, I don't know what metric to optimize for because I don't know which AI model will win the challenge. So it's kind of like an open challenge, and any AI model can win, and I don't know what the winning AI model is going to put as its parameters for how much funding a project should get. And yeah, this is like the last challenge, which is on right now. This challenge will be open for the next 2 months. We are closing submissions on June 10th. And this is 15,000, you have to give 15,000 weights. So it's a lot of weights. It's a very meaty challenge. And we ask that everyone here who's into AI, anyone who has connections with people who are machine learning builders, please get them to submit. Deep funding depends on good AI models being submitted. So this is kind of the main dependency that we have. And the main help that I can receive is basically getting more submissions in this contest. So this is all the partners that have made deep funding possible. Kind of something which has been really cool is how, rather than Ethereum Foundation trying to build everything in-house and build it ourselves, which takes a lot of time, we've just worked with partners who've been working on this issue for many years. So Open Source Observer has been building GitHub dependencies and GitHub graphs for a long time, 1 or 2 years. Pairwise has been working on voting interfaces for about 2 years. Drips has been distributing money to open source repos. Pond is like a machine learning competition where you can take part in the deep funding challenge. So like our job at the EF is just trying to bring these different partners together so that the whole becomes greater than the sum of the parts. So kind of one of the philosophies of EF is subtraction. So we don't want to be building everything. The partners have done it. So that's the subtraction part. And the second philosophy, which I believe in, is synthesis, that how do we make the whole greater than the sum of the parts? So like a car, when you have tires and you have engine, the individual parts are not as good as the whole, which allows for locomotion or movement. So how do we actually make the whole greater than the sum of the parts in the infinite garden that we already have so many trees growing in the infinite garden? How do we get them to talk to each other and actually become more than each individual plant in the garden? And yeah, this is the last slide. This is the QR code to join our Telegram group. So please join, please submit models. If you have an idea of the dependencies in Ethereum, and if you're a core developer, become a judge. So the main 2 ways that we need help, one way is reaching out to AI communities and getting them to submit models. And the second way is being a judge and doing comparisons of the repos to select the winning AI model. So that's kind of the larger point. And yeah, before I conclude, I'll just like talk a little bit about funding mechanisms and what we need and what we want in public goods. So kind of one of the problems with a lot of the funding mechanisms is I decide how much money to give you. So and that affects our relationship. If I give you less money next time, you'll be like, hey, Devansh, why did you give me less money? And then our relation gets affected. So we need to create a level of indirection where I indirectly select an AI model, and the AI model decides how much money to give you so that our relation remains unaffected. So how do we create that level of indirection? And the second challenge is how do we make sure that we don't suffer from projects which divide themselves into multiple sub-projects, get more money than if they were kept as one project. So we've seen this in Gitcoin rounds, we've seen this in Optimism, where if you have one big project, you get less money. But if you divide that big project into smaller projects, you get more money. So that's kind of another big problem that we need to solve. So this is just some prompts for all of you. I hope I was understandable. And please join the Telegram group and help us make this challenge a success. Thanks.